be here. Thank you very much for hosting us, Joe, and Leslie for the introduction. Yes, demystifying AI. It's wonderful. Everybody's heard about it. Some of you may even have played with it. Some of you might even be using it. So we're going to dive into that, but we'll try and set up a little bit as where this has come from, where this kind of thing is actually going, and how really, from a business perspective, you could start to think about this. So a company with 4MC partners, what we try to do is to look at a lot of these kinds of disruptive technologies that are coming along, not just AI is just an example of it, but really trying to understand how do you use these technologies for business purposes. The technology is just a tool. The question is very much, how are you going to use it? So why are you here? Why did you come? Because it's good food. Because Leslie's hosting. You've taken time out of your busy day, so thank you for doing that. And I'm sure you've all heard lots of different things about this AI stuff. I mean, there's an awful amount of it in the press, about how it's going to change the world. You're probably using it already. You might not realize it. But if the goal of AI is to give you a better personalized recommendation of what film you should watch tonight, well, great. Is that going to really change things for your business? Probably not. It's confusing. There's a lot of fast-paced movement. Sam Altman is fired. Sam Altman is rehired. What exactly is going on? Half the team leave. Here. It's lovely for the media. It gives them headlines to print. It's fantastic. But more likely, and this is what we've heard from a lot of business leaders, is I don't really understand what it can do for me, really, within the business. I think, or I know my competitors are using it, but I don't know what they're actually using it for. And then the last piece is, this could be expensive, and that concerns me. So we've seen this kind of thing before. There was this whole movement to using the cloud. The cloud is going to make things absolutely fantastic, and it's going to be so much cheaper. And people started looking at the bills and went, ooh, hang on a minute. We may see the same thing again. So what we want to try and do in the next 30 minutes is really try to get into some of this material. So what is it? What's causing all the fuss? There's an awful amount to try and pack in here, but hopefully what we'll come away with is some practical steps that you can start to think about and possibly implement within your business. And obviously, at the end, questions are great. So, seen this before? The telephone, the mobile phone. Do you remember the bricks? People used to walk around with a brick, and the battery, it might last an hour and a half, perhaps. The internet. Yep, the internet is definitely a toy. Definitely a toy. Smartphones, yes, absolutely, toys, and yet now they are completely indispensable. So why do we think it's going to be any different with something like AI? So quick show of hands, it's a little tricky with the lighting here. Never use AI, never use ChatGPT. Oh, a few. It's okay, we forgive you. It's all right. Have you actually used other things like Bard or what's Gemini this week? It'll probably change next week. Has anybody yet looked at other things other than ChatGPT? Yeah, some people have. Great, that's good. Have you played with things like DALL-E? Yes, okay, so that's good. So people are looking at this stuff, but then how do you actually take what you see and go, oh, hang on a minute, how do I actually apply that to my business? And where would you apply it in your business? That's really the question. So when we look at AI, let's be clear, this is not new. Okay? This is not new. It's been around since the 50s. There are all sorts of different types. These are just some examples of them. But what's happened? Why is it suddenly sort of emerged onto the media and everybody's kind of talking about it? Well, let's be clear, not everybody's talking about it, but the media like lots of headlines. So the reality is it's around you everywhere. Okay? But it's disappeared almost into the background. It's become so normalized we don't even think about the fact that this is a form of artificial intelligence. So, the ANPR systems that are capturing your registration plate as you go in and out of car parks. Oh, and the police use it too, by the way. Yes. Okay. If you use Netflix, it's making suggestions for you. Prime Video, all the rest of it. These are all forms of artificial intelligence. They're using statistics. People like you enjoyed watching this film. the statistics. Okay, so this is what's actually going on. What you're seeing though, for example in businesses, it's happening in the background, it's just a tool. Right now, it's very raw, it's out in front, and people are making lots of noise about it, but the reality is it will probably disappear into the background, it will become normalized. But right now, it's still fairly raw. So, time for some numbers. Okay, so last year, the UK Economic and Social Research Council, this is part of UK government, did a survey. And the survey size is actually quite small when you look into the details, but they came up with this figure that said that 11% of companies had actually invested in AI in some way, shape or form in 2022-23. Okay. British Chamber of Commerce do a survey, much larger, about 3,000 companies, and they come back and said 50% of companies will not use AI. Ever? Just not use AI. No real detail. Amazon come out and say, and of course they have a bit of a vested interest here to say this, 90% of our businesses in the United States are going to be using AI in the next 5 years. The reality is somewhere in between, most likely, okay, most likely. But let's put that back into UK context for a minute. Federation of Small Business believe that there are approximately 5.5 private sector businesses, of which 20% employ staff. Okay, so that's about 1.4 million businesses. So if this number is right, and they're saying it's about 11%, that means approximately 155,000 companies in the UK are using AI today. That probably includes your suppliers and competitors. Probably. And the government is sitting up and starting to pay attention. Now there's a real reason behind this. Okay, if you follow some of the macroeconomic things that are going on, there's been a big issue around UK productivity, which has been relatively flat and hasn't really been gaining. So the government's looking at this and AI and going, oh, hang on a minute. Is this how we start to get more productive? Is this how we can potentially raise GDP? The AI summit last year with Rishi at Bletchley Park and all the rest of it, this is all part of a strategy. You may have seen this announcement, this was only at this time last month, that they're bringing together this AI Opportunity Forum. And they recognize that most companies, right, 10% of companies are actually ready, in quotes, from a skills perspective, from a process perspective, from a business integration perspective, actually ready for AI. So the vast majority are not. Okay, so that's a huge gap. A lot of work that needs to be done to really do this. And this is internationally competitive, right? This is not a case of, we're just competing with, the council next door. No, this is global, right? This is global for talent, this is global for capabilities, it is a global marketplace. So what caused the fuss? This did. ChatGPT launches and they go to 1 million users in a week. Fantastic. But really what changed it was the fact that you could interact with this thing as if you were talking to somebody, texting with somebody, and you didn't need any special skills. No coding, no data science, no real need to understand what this thing actually was doing. It was really, really low barrier to entry. That's what really changed the game. And since then, it's been one thing after another about, look how good ChatGPT can do this, it can do that, it can do the other. I had a conversation with an accountant on Friday who said, did you know it passed one of the UK accountancy exams? It must know a lot about accountancy. Let's be clear, it knows nothing about accountancy. Okay, it mimics it, right? It mimics it. But if you ask it a niche question, it has no idea. It has no idea. It doesn't understand law, it doesn't understand accountancy, it doesn't understand advertising, it doesn't understand any of these things, but it looks like it does. Okay? It looks like it does. And of course the media love this. Elon says you're not going to have a job. That's not what he said. Okay, that's not what he said. He said eventually. He didn't put a timeline. He didn't say next week or in 5 years or 10 years. He said eventually. Or this one happened the other day. DPD. The chatbot went wild and started swearing and saying the chatbot was, don't work with DPD, etc. Did you hear about Air Canada? Yes, has anyone heard about the Air Canada incident? No? Fantastic. Air Canada had a chatbot on their website. They'd had it for months. They didn't know that Air Canada's chatbot was making up company policies. Yes. Now, one of the policies was to do with something called bereavement flights. Hopefully you've never had to purchase a bereavement fare. Basically, there are special fares. If somebody drops dead and you need to get on a plane, there are these special fares that exist. It made up policies that said, yes, you could claim, I think it was something like $500, you know, for any flight anywhere kind of thing. And even if the fare was like $130 or whatever. The point was, a customer complained and said, this thing had told me that this was the company policy. It went to court and the judge ruled in favor of the customer. Air Canada is responsible for what a chatbot says and does. Okay? It is responsible for a chatbot says and does. Okay? So when these things go kind of crazy, which can happen, it's on you. Okay? It's on you. Now, we'll have to have some UK case law, but it's more the point of, look, these are technologies, they're relatively raw, they can do some fantastic things, but they are just technologies, they're not perfect. Definitely not perfect. So, a few myths and a few realities. Yes, ChatGPT knows everything about businesses. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Ask ChatGPT about something that happened yesterday. It doesn't know. No idea. It has to use extra tools to actually understand what happened. Okay, it doesn't actually know. If you ask it, and this is a good one. Anybody own a VW? Yes, some people. Ask it how to change a light bulb in a VW. It has no idea. It doesn't know. It's not got enough information. It's not statistically significant enough to go, oh, this is how I do it. It just doesn't know. So this idea that it can replace everything that you do in your business, no, not true. AI is only for companies with large amounts of data. Again, not really true. It's a lot of it is to do with the quality of your data. Okay, so in large organizations, some of you may have worked in these large organizations, some of you may even be large organizations. All your data is of fantastic quality right the way across the board. Or not so much. Okay, so a lot of the capabilities that these kinds of technologies need are really premised on really good quality data. Not just now, but going forward too. So even if you've not got a lot of data right now, if you've got quality data, that puts you in a really good position. And if you can keep that quality over time, even better. AI is going to make people redundant. Media love this. We've seen it before, and I'm sure you've heard it. You know, every technology revolution, people will be displaced. Yes, it's true. That's happening. That is the case. Is it making people redundant? Maybe from some roles. But right now, in a lot of cases, it can actually help people be more productive. Okay, more productive. As the conversation I had with the accountant the other day, said, "Are you worried about it?" He said, "No, we're loving it. It's getting rid of all the drudge work." Okay, right? So that's a productivity gain for you. So just to give you a few examples, things that it can do. Maybe you've used it. There are tools that are out there. There's a tool called Humata, which is really great at, it can take very long, complex documents, process them, and then you can interact with them. You can ask it questions, right? Questions and answer capability. You know, so if you've got long contracts, for example, you want to look through user manuals, things of that nature. Really, really good. It can do this kind of thing very, very easily. Compliance. There are companies in the construction industry who used to have a health and safety guy who checked, have you got your hard hat, have you got your high-vis, have you got your boots, have you got your safety specs? Gone, right? What they've got now is a video camera. You show up at work and you have to turn around in front of the camera and confirm you've got your hard hat, you've got your goggles, you've got your high-vis, you've got your boots or whatever it is, you're clear to work. Okay, that's one person that can be doing something else. Came across a guy who's working on how you integrate AI into the company workplace. How can you make your employees' lives better? What is the drudge that they do every day of the week, that could be improved in some way, shape, or form? So think about that, not just from the case of, and a lot of this is like, oh, chatbots to help customers. How about chatbots to actually help your employees? Right? What are the latest sales opportunities and marketing capabilities that you've got? What are the latest marketing offers that you've got out there? Can chatbots help with somebody when they're actually engaging with a customer? There are systems that are out there that can actually listen into a conversation on the phone. Right? It's listening to the conversation. It can do sentiment analysis on the phone, and it can make suggestions towards the person, right? The person who's actually talking to the customer. about what they might do under those circumstances. Here are various offers that you might put forward. Here's the various kinds of actions you could take to try and save that customer. So it's not getting rid of the human, it's helping the human. Okay, but it has to be thought about as to how exactly you start to incorporate this to really try and make it an even better place to work in, because you're actually using the technology to help people, right? Not to replace them, actually to help them. So when we look at a lot of these kinds of things, and you could replace AI with another technology, right now what these things are doing is it's a form of business process automation. So if you look at the processes that are happening within your business, where would automation actually make meaningful benefit to your business? Okay? What we've seen is, unfortunately, I'm not sure about this, so I'll dabble with it, and I'll do something in a little corner, and if it goes wrong, no big deal, right? But the problem is then, how do you scale that up to actually being meaningful for a business? So just as a quick example, we were involved in a company who was like, okay, so where do you spend a lot of time? And the answer was, well, we work with our customers, we write up notes. And actually the note writing can take hours. You know, they're on calls with customers, just writing up the notes and writing up the action items, etc., etc. It can take hours. So if you could actually automate that, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if the time being taken is, let's say it's 3 hours a week, and you can bring that down to an hour and a half, that is a significant time that can now be used elsewhere. That's meaningful. That can actually be hugely beneficial, because now your people can be more productive, spending time elsewhere, helping more customers, doing things of that nature. So when we're looking at these kinds of technologies, again, it's not just necessarily AI. AI just happens to be the thing right now. Really, I would sort of advise you, you've got to think very carefully. It's really easy to just jump in and go, oh, we'll use ChatGPT, we'll start using our, creating marketing content for us, or sales pitches or whatever. Great, that's fantastic. Please be very careful. Please be very, very careful. So you would maybe have seen that Google announced their version of ChatGPT. So it used to be called Bard, now it's called Gemini. Look at the terms and conditions. Everything you type in, they are keeping for 3 years. You are helping them improve their models over time, their products over time. So when somebody, very well-meaning, puts in things like the customer's name and maybe some other kinds of personal details and maybe some financial information, yeah, you just leak data, okay? You just leak data. So please, please, please be careful. Please be very careful. And think about where can you start to use these things. So maybe the way to look at it is much more, what are your business goals? What would be meaningful business impact for you? And then you can start to set some goals around that. Absolutely, look at what this thing costs. Okay, because what you're seeing right now is really subsidized. And if we're looking at these technologies that are going to be part and parcel of your business for years, what's that look like in the long run? Because it's not free. It might be cheap, maybe, but you've got to start looking at the cost controls around that. Try to use safe information. Please avoid experimenting with confidential or sensitive information. There have been some examples where people put basically patentable intellectual property into these things. There was a big lawsuit, or sort of a lawsuit between Samsung and ChatGPT, because a Samsung engineer put a load of information about their latest smartphone into ChatGPT. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Okay. I would also suggest think about your vendor strategy. Are you all in on Microsoft? Are you all in on ChatGPT? Are you all in on Gemini? Play with them, because what you'll find is, for example, if you work particularly with ChatGPT, try taking that and moving it, or just experiment, work with Gemini. You'll find very different results. They're not necessarily, ChatGPT might not be the best thing for your business activity. And equally, it could be you end up with different tools for different business activities. Okay, so just think about these kinds of things. Don't be necessarily too sticky, because remember, it's in their interests to make you sticky. So you don't move, right? They don't want you moving around. Maybe your interests are different. But definitely think about, if this works, how will we scale it? How would you roll it out? What has to happen, not just from a technology perspective, but from a staff perspective? Do you need to train them? Do you need to give them access to new kinds of information? Do you need to make sure they're not worried that they're going to be losing their jobs? Right? Perfectly understandable, particularly given how the media present it. You're not going to have a job. Okay, so now that they see that you're implementing these kinds of technologies, it's like, do they start to get worried and they start to push back? Right? So there was a lady who was talking about workplace culture earlier. Yeah, how do you start to incorporate this as part of your culture and make sure that people are on board and not pushing back against it, hopefully? And absolutely, look at the results. What worked, what didn't? What might you do again? Okay, so one experiment may fail. That's okay, it's an experiment. But hopefully it's not going to be one where you then turn and go, oh, this is not for us, we're not going to do this. Maybe it's other areas. Okay, you may have to look around in different parts of the business to actually figure out where is the right place to go. Where is the right place to go? There are plenty of free tools. Let's be clear, they are not free. Okay, they're trying to get you in, and then they're going to change the pricing on you. Of course, of course. However, play, experiment, but please don't think of this from a consumer perspective. It's a nice toy. Look, I can make a fantastic picture of a cat in a spacesuit. Fantastic. Maybe that's part of your business. Maybe cats and spacesuits are a thing. I don't know. More the point, try and think of it from a business perspective. Where could you use these kinds of capabilities? So for example, the text-to-speech. There are companies where their primary market is English speaking, who now can create material in like 30 odd different languages. They just completely expanded their market because now they can address the Spanish speaking world. And they don't have to learn Spanish. They're using systems which will do not only from a video perspective, it does text to speech, but it also does lip sync, right? It looks like you're speaking Spanish. I mean, it's really, really very good. But what does that do for your business? Suddenly you've now got a much, much broader market to potentially address. And as I mentioned, this kind of documents to Q&A, lengthy documents can be incredibly boring to read through and pick out all various bits and pieces. Even these kinds of tools, you can play with it today, understand, try and see what the potential is. But bear in mind, what you're seeing right now is very early. Okay, so for example, you may have come across all sorts of courses out there, how to prompt ChatGPT. Great, but come back in a year's time and it will be completely different. Use those prompt mechanisms on a different model. It doesn't work. Okay, so please play with these things, but hold them loosely. Don't necessarily go, this is necessarily the tool. It's going to change. It's going to change. Think strategically. Right? This is here. How can we use it? How might we incorporate it as part of what we do? The answer may be, not today, but at least you thought about it. Right? Your competitors are thinking about it. They may only be in that 10%, but the majority of your competitors are probably in the 90%. So if even the fact that you're thinking about it puts you in a better position than most. But thinking about this from a business perspective, rather than, hey, a bunch of random experiments that may give you some, you might hit gold, maybe, fantastic. Chances are probably not, probably not. But start to think about this from a business perspective, because there are things that can be done in here. There are productivity improvements that could be brought out for you. There are changes that could be made for you, not necessarily for you, but for your colleagues, and maybe even for your customers. There may be even the inverse, which is the value is now about human interaction. People don't want to necessarily interact with the chatbot. Chatbots will become everywhere, and we hate them, or whatever. Or chatbots, a cautionary tale. Somebody thinks that they're talking to you, but it's not. It's a chatbot, and the chatbot is so good that the person talking to you doesn't realize it's not you, and then the chatbot says something it shouldn't. but the person talking to it doesn't realize it's not a chat, it's not you, right? It's a chatbot. So yes, this stuff will get better. Be careful, be cautious, right? It can do great things. So I would ask, we're almost at the end here, some questions. Have you thought about how you could use it? The fact that you're here is great, because now I'm prompting you to think about how you might go ahead and use it. Is your business ready? And I mean that right the way up and down the business, not just from a technology perspective, but from the data perspective, from your people perspective, from the culture perspective, because some people are going to be very worried, right? They're going to be very worried. The media is like, oh, you're going to lose your job. You need to address that. What you don't want necessarily is people who are pushing back against it going, oh, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible. Much, much harder. If you can bring people along on the journey, much easier. It's not free, okay? It's not free. So do try and understand what these costs are going to be, not just now, but in a year's time, 2 years' time, etc. And could it be that it's actually happening right now? You just don't know about it. Okay, you just don't know about it. We had an incident where a real estate agent, sorry, I talk with too many Americans, an estate agent noticed that one of their sales team, the quality of their emails suddenly improved. Suddenly improved. It's like, what happened there? Can you guess? What were they doing? Well-intentioned, well-meaning, absolutely. Leaking customer names, leaking customer details. Can't put the genie back in the bottle, okay? So in some cases it's even, let's put a policy out there, let's talk about this with people so they know what they can do with these tools and what they absolutely should not be doing. I'll give you a story from corporate life. The company where I used to be, ChatGPT comes out, everybody piled in, and the legal people freaked out and said, everybody don't use it, stop. And everyone went, oh, okay then. So what did they do? They all opened up personal accounts and started using the tools that way. People will always find ways around, okay? People will always find ways around. So yeah, think about it. Just from a risks perspective, just think about what is the kind of information that you are comfortable putting onto these systems, and other ones we go, you really don't want to do that. And by the way, there are ways, I'm not going to go into them here, there are ways to keep your data private. Okay, keep your data private, keep your data secure, and still work with these kinds of systems. So a few resources for you. There's a website, we have a number of articles and things that are up there right now. Absolutely happy to talk with any of you on any of these kinds of questions. There's a document here which covers a lot more detail behind some of the things I've just been talking about now, which may also be really useful for you. So please do take a copy. And yeah, thank you. It's here. It's not perfect. Oh, sorry, you want to go back? Sorry, there we go. Is that okay?
We will send the slides out to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have all the links on it there. But yeah, AI is here. It's not perfect. It's absolutely not perfect, but it can be useful for your business if it's used in the right way. It can be confusing, that's for sure. It can be complex, but it doesn't have to be complicated, okay? It doesn't. We can certainly help you with that, and I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you very much for your time.